Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Q2 OWASP Omaha chapter meeting. We've got a great lineup for you today. For those who couldn't be here, we are recording this meeting and we'll put it on YouTube later. So I'll make sure to send out a link to that. No real updates other than we're going to give this a shot while we're still all kind of self-isolating. We do have some fun things planned for Q3 and Q4 for the chapter. So we'll keep everybody up to date on what's planned for that, assuming we could all, meet in person by then as well. So we got a great speaker today. Your very own John Rogers, one of the co-leaders of the Omaha OWASP chapter, is talking about software composition analysis, and it's going to be an awesome talk. So, ladies and gentlemen, John Rogers.
Michael, thank you. Thank you. Wishing everybody and their families are safe and sound. Crazy days out there. This has been the software composition analysis, kind of a new term. You always got to come up with catchy titles for your presentation. So mine was going to be Patch or Die. And this is catching a lot of security departments, application security teams, kind of unaware a little bit. They know they've been doing this, but along the way they didn't realize what the risk or what the exposure was happening. So let's go through here a quick outline, a quick introduction. I always like to put, a lot of my talks start off talking about doom, and then sometimes I get a little more doom. And then hopefully towards the end of the presentation, I start to reel that back in and provide some ideas on how to have less doom. Okay, so we'll talk about why we're here, talk about open source libraries, talk about software composition analysis, get into some of the solutions, and then look at some of our next steps there, and then we'll open it up for questions. If you got questions along the way, feel free to, in Zoom, do the raise your hand, and either I'll see it or Michael will, and we can stop for a minute and do some short questions along the way too. Okay, quickly, I point everybody, instead of putting everything up on the page about what I've done, go up to my LinkedIn. You can read through things there, find out what I'm about, what I like to do. The OWASP Omaha link here is our new chapter link. It's all out of being run through GitHub. A lot of great information. We're starting to revamp all the information up there and get it updated. Okay, why are we here? Because we're starting to see, and I've got 2018, but they've been going on in 2019 too. So these aren't any new headlines. Okay, unpatched vulnerabilities, the source of most data breaches. Wow. Okay, fairly strong statement. Unpatched applications, #1 cybersecurity risk. Okay, I thought it might have been, disgruntled employees, but unpatched software vulnerabilities, a growing problem, OPSWAT. Okay, and I've got links there in the slides, and we'll make the slides available. Outdated, unpatched software, rampant in business, threat post. Okay, and this is the fun one. Thousands of companies are still downloading the vulnerability that wrecked Equifax. And you can go up and click on the Fortune link and get there. So just briefly talking about that, the Equifax data breach. Interesting timeline here. May 13th, the breach was initiated. July 29th, Equifax discovers the breach. Okay. September 7th, Equifax discloses the breach. 143 million customers. I suspect we all might have been, impacted, or we know people that were. Apache struts, remote code execution, CVE 2017-5638, the big main thing there. And I'll get into in the next couple of slides what that really is. But this, you look at the timeline, and there was, 40 days before the breach was happening, before Equifax discovered it. We see, and that's, I think, kind of a short period of time. I think you end up seeing a lot longer period of times once a breach has been done until the target discovers that they have a problem. Now, a lot of people started to get into, Equifax says, it wasn't us. We had good security. It was Apache. They didn't patch their vulnerabilities. And so Synopsys came out with the timely, or around that time period, the Apache Struts RCE timeline. And so we see 5638. It was disclosed on March 6th. Okay. The exploit was available and it was patched on March 6th. Okay. Keep going along here. May 13th. Okay. 72 days after the post disclosure, the Equifax, somebody takes the exploit and starts to attack Equifax with it. Okay, so they had 72 days there. Along the way, now we've seen some other ones come along, CV 2017-9791, and I'll show you what that is. But again, disclosed July 7th, the exploit was available, and Apache Struts patched it, okay, that same day. Very responsive. July 29th, 149 days post-disclosure, Equifax discovers their breach. Okay, yeah, this is really interesting when you start to look at this timeline. A couple other Apache Struts RCEs that popped up, 9805, September 5th, September 6th, and it was patched September 5th. And we look at 12611, okay, September 7th, exploit available September 7th, and it was patched on September 5th. And finally, September 7th, Equifax finally discloses their breach for the 5638 vulnerability that was attacking them. So right now, I'm pretty sure just a quick analysis of this timeline, I think Apache Struts has been very responsive, you know, and about finding the vulnerabilities and getting them patched very quickly. So just this one timeline tells me that it was Equifax and they're sloppy. Just highlights here on 5638. Okay, Jakarta, multi-part parser and Apache Struts. Okay. And as you start to read, and we'll get into talking about some more CVEs and the important parts about looking at them, but you start to look for very specific words. Execute arbitrary commands, okay? Remote code execution. What this means when you start to see that is that the software is vulnerable to an attacker taking their own code, uploading it, injecting it, and running it on the server. Okay, you could say the server didn't have any sensitive data, but when I get to run my own code on the server, I get to go attack all the server's neighbors. I get to go attack the network. Okay, the 9805, the REST plugin in Apache Struts, again, without any type filtering, which can lead to remote code execution, deserializing XML payloads. Gets a little more ambiguous, but still using an unintentional expression in a FreeMaker tag instead of string literals can lead to an RCE attack. Okay, kind of a little more abbreviated, but still 12611 still would have made me being talking to the app dev teams to get stuff patched right away. Okay, so that's kind of why we're here. This is kind of underneath the current. We've got a ton of development teams throughout the organization that's pulling in these software libraries. Why? Why do we like using them? Why do the development teams love them? Okay, and I found some great acronyms. DRIVE. Okay, don't repeat yourself. Okay, I don't want to, you know, do code duplication. I like reusable components. Okay, so that's a good reason for third-party libraries. Okay, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Simplicity, don't over-engineer the solution. Okay, get what you just need. Okay, YAGME. Okay, that was a new one to me. Build to the requirements, not the future. I probably tried to do that when I was developing, but I didn't think I was doing the you ain't gonna need it. And we've all heard don't reinvent the wheel. Okay, if I've got a piece of code out there that's handling my logging, a nice log4j component, why do I need to solve that problem if I've got it and it's got appenders? So don't reinvent the wheel. Third-party libraries, pros, save time. Hey, we're saving time on our development schedule. Happy boss, you know, happy business team. As a developer, I like things modular. I like pre-tested code, okay? And it's free. It's free software. I love this. I don't have to get a license. It's free software. It's a software tree. Okay, the cons. We got dependency. We've got support issues that come with third-party libraries. And as we've started to see with the headlines, we've got a bunch of security issues that come with this. Okay, pulled this out of the synopsis. And I was working with the 2019 one and then found the 2020, and they had audited over 1,200 applications. And they found that 99% of the code bases audited in 2019 contained open source components. Okay, that's probably not a super big surprise if you've been developing. Okay, in 9 of 17 industries, 100% of those code bases contained open source. Okay, this bottom one, okay, we're starting to see a lot, the percentages used to be 40, 50%. Now we're starting to see them up in the 60s, 70s, and what Synopsys found was open source made up 70% of the audited code base. So the app development team is only building 30% of the applications that they're putting into production. A little scary when you start to see that number there. Okay. One of the things, if you're starting to do this, if you're starting to use open source libraries, you really got to have a software bill of materials. That should be SBOM. But if you don't, these are questions that you've got to start to ask. Okay, are you using high quality open source components? What about the licensing? Is it permissive? Is it restrictive? Are you using the current version? How stable is that software library that you pulled in? Okay, is there maintenance? Is there a robust support community that if there's issues that people, you know, are jumping on it and getting things fixed and getting new code pushed? You know, is there security? Are there groups testing it? And it's not my quote, but the bottom one I found in a couple different places. You can't patch it if you don't know what you're using or if you're using it. Now, I think I actually wrote a paper for Mr. Warner's graduate cybersecurity courses a number of years ago, and I made that open source software was very much like free kittens. Okay, they're not free. Okay, it's a free kitten, mom. Okay, they're not free. Food, litter, toys, and you can start to think that there's analogies to your open source libraries here. Okay, that little cat, that little kitten might have some fleas, might have a tick, you know, ear mites. You're going to have some vet bills. Okay, and they only stay kittens for so long. Okay, they grow up to be cats, and when they are, they're not so cute anymore. And the bottom one, it's now your cat. Once you pull in an open source library, you can't just ignore it. Okay, it's yours, and you got to take care of it. Okay, so let's get into the definition of software composition analysis. I pulled this out of WhiteSource, one of the companies that does SCA. Again, relatively new industry term for a set of tools that provides users, developers, security, visibility into their open source inventory. Okay, usually the tool is producing a database and reports that allows you to query on the licensing of your open source components. You know, are you GPL? Are you using a Mozilla? We had years ago, Hibernate, I'm dating myself a little bit, but the application development team went off and wanted to grab Hibernate and start to put it into the banking products. And we looked and we said, hey, we think there's a problem in that licensing that it was using at the time, that you may have to donate all of the code and all of the derivative works to the open source, to the public domain. And the development team went, no, 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 no. You go up onto the Hibernate website, And even the originator, the developer of Hibernate, says it's fine. Don't worry about the license, you know, it's not going to be a problem. So we got on a WebEx with the app dev teams, security, and the legal team. And we went through the whole spiel again, and the development said, see, here it is on his website. It says there's not going to be a problem. And the lawyer went, he's not a lawyer. And it kind of brought up, you know, it stopped the app dev team kind of right in their tracks going, oh. And they go, and the lawyers, you know, the legal team started to say, this is with the licensing, and that derivative statement is just going to open the door. So licensing is a huge thing as you're looking at your open source inventory. Vulnerabilities, and we'll get into some of those. We've already seen some of those, like with the Apache struts. But you want to have that report that starts to tell you about the vulnerabilities that you're walking into or that you have exposure to right now. Do you have the ability to do automatic policy enforcements? Okay, maybe you have an application security standard that says no end of life, no open source components with significant, you know, critical or high or RCE vulnerabilities. Could you start to flag that, you know, that the tool would actually know about your policy statements, and as it builds the report, it could have that information there. Does the inventory report or the queries into these tools help get the developers pointed at the secure versions? Okay, log4j, you know, 1.217, it should be telling you to move up to like a log4j 2.x, you know, or Jackson data bind. I should have brought that one up and showed us that, but that's one of my favorite ones right now. So these tools are getting really interesting. And as we talk about the vulnerabilities, we know that vulnerabilities equal risk. And as we get into software composition analysis, getting into that, we get in talking about CVEs, vulnerability severities, and vulnerability categories. Okay, so what are these CVEs? Okay, it's a very standard common vulnerabilities and exposures. Okay, they are, and this very first term here, publicly disclosed cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So they're not a 0 day where nobody knows about this yet. This is a publicly disclosed vulnerability, and that maybe over 90% of the time has an exploit already been written for it. And again, maybe a lot of times, and I think it's in the high percentage, that their vendor already knows about those vulnerabilities and has produced patches. We've seen a few occasions, Selenium, I think, had a Ruby component that was vulnerable and that the community hadn't developed a fix for it yet. And I'll talk about that one when we come up. But as we start to look at like the Apache struts one with Equifax, all of your CVEs have IDs, okay? There's a numbering authority, the CNA, and they have banks and they assign CVEs. Usually it'll be CVE the year that it's discovered, and then it'll be in a sequence. And they have blocks, and so you may see them out of sequence a little bit, pretty much sequence-wise as they find them throughout the year. How do you get CVEs generated? Okay, so CVE reports can be generated by a vendor. It can be generated by security researchers. And then you've also got bug bounties, vendor bug bunnies, Microsoft, Oracle. They've got ways that if you can find vulnerabilities in their applications, their components, their software, that you may be able to document it, submit it to them, and possibly get some money. So very interesting on the bug bounties. Getting up into the list, and I might jump out here just so I can show a couple here, but there's a couple very good free lists. There's the CVE list and the NIST NVD. Okay, and the NIST one is actually a government repository of the standards-based vulnerability management data represented using the Security Content Automation Protocol. So you can start to pull that in, and if you've got SCAP tools, you can start to manage that information there. So I'm going to jump out of my show here and just go over here and bring up the NIST NVD here. Okay. Okay, so National Vulnerability Database, you can get in and start to look for your vulnerabilities, do some searching, a lot of great information there. Come down here on the search. We're going to look for vulnerabilities, and we're going to go pick on Tomcat. Actually, Jackson. Okay. So if you're using Jackson data bind, there's lots of evilness happening with the Jackson data bind. So very easy, search for Jackson. It lets me see CVE 2020, 11620. And if I come in, I want to find out maybe a little more juicy. It doesn't show me, oh yeah, it does over here. And I've got my, my Zoom videos there. So the severities. Okay, already this is looking like a fun one just to go look at real quickly. Okay, 11620. Mishandles interaction between serialized gadgets and typing related to Yorg Apache Commons Jelly Impl embedded, aka Commons Jelly. Okay, you can get in more information here, find out about this. You can start to get up on the GitHub. You can probably go up to Maven, find out what version you're working with here. Hopefully find a way that, I love this, don't panic, here's what you need to know. So already a lot of people start talking about it, about the issues with the vulnerabilities in the serialization gadgets. Okay, so lots of great information. I also like CVE details because CVE details helps me when somebody says, how bad is it, John? And all I have to do is show them something like this, Jackson. Okay, now I want Jackson data bind because I don't think that's getting me as bad as I was thinking. Let's see here, Jackson data bind. Yeah, okay. So they start to say, how bad is it? And it's real easy for you to take a snapshot, a screenshot of just this and say, hey, I've got a number of vulnerabilities. I've only got one page, but I've had 26 vulnerabilities. These are all the 7.5. But you can start to move through your vulnerabilities if you just want to come back up to Jackson data bind, okay, and look at 2019, 2018, okay, code execution, and you can get some nice graphs. So you're trying to make a case for somebody to wake up and understand what they should be working on here. Those lists are really good. So let me get back into presentation there. Okay, and there's CVE details. Again, easy to use web interface to browse the CVE vulnerable data. Vulnerable VulnDB. And again, it's worthwhile just popping out there for a second. There we go, I've been there. They like to tout themselves as the most comprehensive. And they're actually saying they've got tons more vulnerabilities that they've documented than what's in the NIST. Okay. Here we go. 74,000. I'm not sure if that's completely accurate. I haven't used VulnerableDB. I've seen a presentation of them with the JFrog X-Ray product. It's an interesting environment. I'd probably, I've got a lot of free information that's helping me, do the software composition analysis, talk to the development teams right now. I don't know if I need VulnerableDB yet. And I'm more than, if somebody's got a question or that they're using it, feel free to raise your hand and jump in there. Okay, so I'm going to go back into the show. Okay, no, okay, we'll go back to that. Yep. So the severities. So again, common vulnerability scoring system. I've got links for these. open standards for assigning a number to a vulnerability to assess its severity. Okay. Scores are used by the NVD, CERT, and others to assess the impact. Scores range from 0.0 up to 10.0, higher number being worse, okay? And we find a lot of vendors sometimes create their own scoring systems as well. Uh-oh, that looks like a duplicate slide. Okay, so starting to get into vulnerability categories. You'll see criticals, highs. A lot of companies will say, they'll come out with a policy that they'll say maybe mediums, you know, low, not killers, and we're going to really focus in on that the application development teams need to remediate their critical and highs. But then they'll also have a remote code execution that'll probably be a separate. We've seen companies, you know, allow critical and high CV vulnerabilities to work with a standard security exception that could anywhere have a remediation date of 1 to, you know, maybe 10 or 11 months, depending upon the severity. RCEs, that starts to become like, how bad? I pulled this from someone that, yeah, it's the house is on fire, okay? And we're just waiting for it to spread to the neighbors. And that's going to happen pretty quickly if the exploits start to happen. So the analogy would be call the fire department now. And this is something that hopefully your CISO is going to know about it. And they need to start to have a policy of saying, this has to be fixed. You know, John, work with the application development team to fix as soon as possible. Okay. You may be able to use that security exception process to document those. But if you start to get any pushback, any of the application development teams dragging their feet, have a process in place where you can have the security engineer can escalate this to the CISO, and that the CISO has a process to expose this to the senior leadership team. And it's not where an application development manager says, sure, I'll talk to your CISO. I've been there where I said, no, you need to go 3 levels up. So right now you should start to escalate up to your senior VP, because that's who our CISO and senior VP needs to talk to. And that starts to hit home when you start to say, no, that it's right now, if it's new code, you're not going to go into production. If it's existing code, this has to be fixed as fast as possible. And what you're really looking for is for the application development team to understand the issue and start to develop a plan. Okay, having a plan is halfway, 3/4 of the way there to getting it remediated. Okay, so let's talk about some solutions here. And I'm going to stop and just pause a second and see if there's any questions right now.
Hey, John, are you
Yeah.
looking in the chat or?
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is like, do we have at your workplace any process to or kind of workflow from the time the developer procure or download the open source or make a request to the open source, and then the security team to the research to see any vulnerability and then approve that? How is the current process like, or you can tell your best practices to follow?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great question right at this point in time too. Yeah, and I'll show you some of that because I get into some of that, but yeah, so on the solutions, we'll get into that. That's, Alani, that's a great question. Because yeah, are we just letting the developers download software and we don't discover the problem until 2 years later? Yeah, how do we be proactive? How do we put the process in place for them to be, you know, finding out stuff before we start to get that into production? Great question, and I'll get to it in the solutions.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, well, let's see here. Okay. All right, we'll keep on going. Close up my chat and go back to the show here. There we go. All right. So, interestingly enough, we have a number of OWASP tools and processes in place to help us. Okay, dependency check, dependency track, the application security verification standard. Okay, and then I've got a link here to the OWASP component analysis, which is a great page of information. So we'll get into some of those. Okay, so dependency check. And I actually may run a couple of the little demos that I want to show here right now. So dependency check is a software composition, an SCA tool. Detect publicly disclosed vulnerabilities, okay. It can run with Java, .NET, Python, Ruby, PHP, and Node.js. It has command line, Ant, Maven, Gradle plugins. It even has a SonarQube integration into it. And I think I'll drop out for a second and we'll just do a quick dependency check demo. So what I've got over here is I've got the dependency check command line downloaded. Dependency check, bin. When you first download this from OWASP, and let's go there. OWASP dependency check, perfect. So you'll download the command line, or if you want to play with the plugins, you'll unzip it, and you'll end up with this type of structure, a DC, dependency check, okay, bin. You probably won't have data right away. As you run it the first time, it will start to go up to the National Vulnerability Database and start to create a repository of basically header information from the NVD. And so that will take a little bit of time as you start to run it the first time. Okay, now what I've got here is I'm going to take some old commons, jars, and Apache log4j. And I've got this folder here with nothing in it. This is where I'm going to put my output reports. And we can come down here and take a look at our little bat file here that is going to run the dependency check.bat file. So this is part of what you get with dependency check, the core, and then you give it a project name. It's just a way to track its intermediary information. Then you tell it your output area. I'm going to have it put all my reports out to live out. And then I'm going to say for my output format, I want to run all of it. I want a CSV, I want a JSON, I want an HTML file. And then I say, here, scan it. Now, you can tell dependency check to go scan a WAR, an EAR. It can scan individual jars. You can tell it to scan a .msi file, okay? And it'll be able to unpack those and pull the information out. Okay, so we've seen what it looks like here. Let's pop over here to, let me get out of there we go. And security, OWASP, 20, nope, not soup to nuts. Keep going. Wow. I should have put the 2020 in there. We're getting there. Okay. So I've got the dependency check live folder here, bat file. So we'll just run that guy. He echoes the command. He'll start to spin up here. He'll go up to the vulnerability database, and he says, I don't need to do it. We'll come back here in a second. But he says, you've already updated your database just recently. So any good presenter usually likes to run their demos ahead of time, but skipping the MVD check since last check was within 24 hours. Okay, skipping retire JS update since that was within 24 hours. Great. Analysis starts. It goes through it pretty quickly here, and the analysis is complete. Let's go see what it produced. And there we go. So we're going to go into the live out. And I've got a CSV, I've got an XML, JSON. Okay, so let's open it up here. So here's the HTML. And just for grins, we'll bring it open and look at the CSV. Eh? Okay. And identifiers, licensing, the vulnerability. This is where you can start to see it, the scores. And if we look at it in the HTML format there, that you can use the CSV. Sometimes you can easily just start to look for critical. Okay. So we see 2017 1507 associated with, as we scroll up here, the Commons collection. Okay. See the critical. You can start to walk through those. Apache Commons file upload. Okay, log4j 1.2. I'm going to come back to this one. I'm going to save this one for an interesting little analysis discussion later. Then you get some links. So you can start to see how the information is structured. You get the CVE. You've got a link that'll take you right to the NVD. You've got reference links here. So a lot of dependency checks been growing up. It's been getting better. Right now it's more of an ad hoc tool, but you can incorporate this into your pipeline right now. We've got teams as they're deploying, doing development, that they perform their Fortify SCA scans, upload it to the Fortify portal. We've got Sonar Key being used, and they're running the dependency check as part of the pipeline, and it automatically gets uploaded to their Sonar cube entry there. So you can start to do things right now with dependency check and the plugins. So very good to start to think about how to, start to go play with it and play with the information, maybe in the CSV form. So lots of ways to consume the output. Okay, so let's come back and bring us back into the presentation. So that was a quick demo on dependency check. I do not have yet it installed, the OWASP dependency track, but it's a much broader platform. Okay, the supply chain component analysis is what it's called, where the dependency check really isn't building your inventory and starting to work with you on a software bill of materials. Dependency track will do that. What's also cool, Palani, is it's got an API first design. So it's built, it has a lot of easy integration with your CI/CD environments. And I'll just pop out and we'll go to the previous slide and do a control click here. Okay, so very interesting platform. I'm just waiting. This is so many tools, so little time type of thing right now. But if you're looking for, a software composition analysis and maybe a software inventory, I think dependency track would be like tailor-made for what you're looking for. Integrations, I love what it's doing here. Cyclone SPDX, vulnerability intelligence, okay, great. Notification platforms, API integration, vulnerability aggregation, supported repositories. Yeah, I just love what this is turning into. My Internet Explorer 11 is out of date. That's special. Okay, we'll drag ourselves back to the presentation. How am I doing on time, Michael? I think 7:54.
Yeah, you're
okay.
Good.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So that was dependency track. Really want to spend some time getting into that at some point. If you're just starting to look at software composition analysis, Dependency check, kind of for ad hoc. You could start to integrate it in, but I think where you'll probably end up is probably something like dependency track. The OWASP Application Security Verification Standard, the ASVS. Okay, application security has been aware of the ASVS. Mature programs utilize the ASVS. So all of a sudden now, the ASVS, it's buried a little bit further in the back, section 14, I think, but they've got section 14.2 is on dependency. Dependency management critical to safe operation. Okay, failure to keep up to date with outdated or insecure dependencies. Okay, and it's got some good requirements here. Verify all components. Verify that all unneeded features, are removed. I love it. Verify that the application assets, JavaScript library, style sheets that are hosted externally. This is something so if you're pulling in those, you definitely want the subsource integrity, the SRI, to be used, but you should start to look at and develop a policy. What do you want to accept from a CDN? Do you want to allow style sheets to be coming from a CDN, or do you want to come from your own source catalog, your on-prem source catalog? You'll see certain organizations that will say anything that's executable, JavaScript, code, Java, .NET. Yes, I understand there's a CDN that has it, but our policy is going to be that you're going to pull it in-house, we're going to scan it, we're going to run dependency scans on it, get reports on that and understand that, and then you can source it from inside, from on-prem repositories. When you start to allow that CDN, you really need to think about doing that before you let the development teams have a free-for-all. 14.2.4, verify components come from predefined, trusted, and maintained repositories. Inventory catalogs maintained. Okay, again, you can't patch it if you don't know you're using it. And verify that the attack surface is reduced by sandboxing or encapsulating libraries if they've got some, vulnerabilities that you can't remediate right away. And we'll talk about that with that log4j one. So that was kind of interesting. Some other solutions, NPM audit, very nice packages for your Node.js and JavaScript environments. Retire.js. I don't know if anybody knows about Retire.js or seen it before, but we'll pop out. Let's go up to the Douglas County. We'll bring it home and go up to the map that we always go up and hit right now with these uncertain times. And I got to move my little talking window. I have Retire.js plugin in Chrome here. And I can see right away that I've got a little red #1 here. And I've got my Retire.js. So this is one of my little demos telling me that this site is using an outdated version of jQuery and that there's a low CVE associated with that. Okay. I've also got a couple others there. Let's see. And it'll let you take it up 2019-11358. jQuery commits to, okay, in the blog on jQuery. So, very interesting what you can find with just a little tool like Retire.js that's scanning your sites. Okay, so let's go back to presentation. Okay, and of course, there's a .NET Retire too. Let me get back to presentation. Okay. Some of the commercial ones out there, the Black Duck Hub, JFrog X-Ray. So JFrog X-Ray, we're starting to see a lot of inventory management, starting to think about those components, stuff that's built inside and stuff that the third party that they're pulling in. And so JFrog Artifactory is a commercial offering. And lets you do that where you can start to, it's a commercial version of doing that inventory. Well, the X-Ray component, I believe it works with VulnDB data, scans your inventory and produces reports. So there's the open source tools, the OWASP, and then you can start to see some of the commercial tools that are starting to be able to sell some pretty decent offerings there. Okay, so I've already hit demo 1, which was the Douglas County and the retired JS. I've run demo 2, the dependency check. Now, we'll see how this is going to work. I did not get a chance to try this beforehand, but this is taking dependency check, the output from it, dropping it into a share location on a server, and that we have code that we built, Python, that's watching that share location, takes that dependency check, HTML even, and parses it and creates JIRA tickets. So let's go try a demo that I'm not sure is going to function like we all think. So with that, it's, yeah, okay, so I'm in JIRA right now. And I do have my vulnerable HTML report here. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go up to my VA1, PW. And I got a drop folder here. I've got it under my name. I created a new OWASP folder here. If everything's working, all I should have to do is drop my dependency check in there. Woohoo! Okay, it's a good thing that it went away right away. So let's go take a look up over here and see if it's been able to process those in. Not yet. We'll give it a second and keep looking. Because it should come in, I thought, with the, let's see, created recently. Nope, 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 nope. Okay, reported by me. I'm hitting some of my fun tickets, my open issues. Okay, let's go here. Search issues, current search. Okay. Status, okay, all. Edited. Yeah. Order by, so assignee, and okay, so let's see if it didn't come in as me. So current user. Oh, hey, wait. System information, when did that, is not telling me when those came in. But let's see here. And if we go back to the dependency check and we look, so live, yeah, let's see if I can just do it on live. I have a feeling it worked, but yeah, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Okay, let's scroll down and see. And then a cross-site request forgery. No, I don't believe these are us. Yeah. Project. Yeah, it's when it comes in, I thought it would come in with that OWASP that I had set up there. And these are from some other testing. All right, so they're in there. I just don't have my searching down pat. But so that's what's going on, is that all of those issues that you see in here right now were processed through being able to drop information into a spot and get it in there. So we can see log forging issues. We've got CVE issues that get in there. So you can open up the JIRA ticket. There we go. Third-party library vulnerability. Dependency check was the source. And you can start to pull information and reports out of JIRA to get metrics on that. it'll come up and you can have it, your parser. And this is just a simple little Python parser that's taking that and pushing that up to JIRA. And so you can get your labels if you wanted to do your searching on how many RCEs that you have out there that need to be addressed. You can do that. So that's one integration there with JIRA. Okay, so not perfect on my demo, but not terrible. So I give myself a 50% on it. I think it got processed into JIRA. I'm just having trouble finding it. Okay, so let's, I want to come back and talk about this log4j 1.217 analysis. You're going to find development teams, when they start to look at this, they'll start to say, you'll get some of the development folks that go, okay, John, you're telling me it's an RCE, it's bad, I got to fix it. I went up and read about it. You go, yeah. And they go, it's what's vulnerable is a socket server class in log4j. Okay, and I understand it's a deserialization of untrusted data and can be made to run your own code. Okay, and it affects this versions of log4j. We don't want to upgrade right now. We think it's going to be some serious retesting that we're not ready to, the business and the development team's not ready to take on. And John, here's the kicker. Socket servers not configured by default. So wouldn't you agree with me, John, that this is a false positive? Anybody want to take a shot?
I've got my opinions about that, but
yeah, go for it, please. No, this is kind of where we open some of those up.
Yeah, so if it's not implemented in the code, I wouldn't necessarily consider it a false positive if the library is running. It's just that the vulnerable code is not running, right? So you can maybe give them a little bit of a extension on the vulnerability.
Right, and so I think we're using a term vulnerable but not exploitable, not currently exploitable, which is kind of what you're saying. Is that, but so definitely not a false positive, and it still has to be fixed. So this becomes, yeah, is it lower severity, lower risk, because it's not, we don't have that socket server sitting there listening and could be exploited, definitely. But all it takes is a contractor to come along, trying to fill up requirements and go make a change and, start that listener up. And boom, we've got a very big problem there. So definitely not a false positive, definitely something that the development, because they're looking for less things that they have to worry about, less things they have to change after they've gone through this. Yeah, no, Michael, great comment there. Anybody else want to get in and? But yeah, it takes some of that analysis to dive in on some of those to understand what is the exposure, what is the risk, and is it's something you need to do about now, or could you have some time for the development team to fix it? Okay, so let's see where we are here. So my next steps is start to spend some time, get educated. Okay, take the information from the slide deck here, start to go up and do some research. And I'm going to come out of the deck here and just go click on the OWASP component analysis link that takes us up there. So great information up here. Talks about risk factors, known vulnerabilities, component type, a lot of things we've hit along the way here. Repository trust, pedigree, licensing, okay, your bill of materials, component identification, policies. So great tool list of open source and commercial. So this is a very comprehensive OWASP page here on component analysis. And the other one that I had there in the presentation, and this is a little bit older read. Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Yes, I've been there before. It's the contrast security, guys. The unfortunate reality of insecure libraries. So a great read. I don't remember if this, how old this was. I want to say, okay, 2014. I want to say this is 2017, 2018. But this is a great document that shows some of the bad things, shows some of the good things, and again, tries to reel you back in with solutions at the end. Let me go back, because I think we are right there at the end to see if we've got questions.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you have an
Yeah.
organization, sorry, if you have an organization that basically is just starting with an application check to make sure that we're out of, they don't have vulnerabilities or different departments basically taking over that section. What are some of the big things that you would have them start doing right away?
Probably a very crude, I'd look at the dependency track. Okay, free open source, it can start to get you that inventory. So I think the very first step is to start to get an inventory of what it is, what the versions are. And then once you have that, you can start to use dependency track, dependency check, or even some of the other tools to start to add to that inventory about the vulnerabilities. So again, it's what are we using? Where did we get it? And how did we get it? As you start to get the inventory, it becomes really important to understand, was there just a general, it's okay to download stuff from the internet type of attitude? How did those, where did those software components, those third-party libraries, are they just up on your production environment? Are they in a source catalog somewhere? And they may be. You may find them sporadically or inconsistently in places that the development team said, well, nobody was really telling us that we had a general policy. We didn't have a software czar saying these are how we're going to have to handle our third-party libraries. And so starting to get policies in your security standards would be another good first step to say, nothing out of date, no end of life, and nothing with significant or known vulnerabilities. So get the policies in place, that's the teeth, that's the law, and then start to work with the application development teams to get that inventory. And then looking at some of the things like dependency track that can help you, build that software, build the materials, and all of the pieces of information that goes with it.
Sure. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Palani, you had something.
Yeah, I want again your opinion. With my experience with the SCA tool, normally, application security team being kind of understaffed, we rely on automated scan tool, SCA commercial tool.
Yep.
But those tools were not good at identifying all the forges, either at NuGet or npm package or a pip file. And then again, it's not only this, legal also comes into place by looking at the licensing type of license being allowed. I know we are looking at the OWASP tool. With your experience, are you using that? Is the auditor, are they okay with using these dependency tools, or do you still?
Okay, no, now this is, I think I know a little bit where you're going. We are using dependency check extensively. In fact, every code has to be scanned by our static tool at the end of every sprint. Okay, we have that built into our pipelines, and as more development teams start to jump into building their own pipeline, we're working with our DevOps team and our DevOps evangelists. We've got dependency check being run, and you can go up and access it with some of the teams that are using SonarQube. We would love SonarQube, by the way, to be a good static tool. but it's not there yet. We actually talked to the Sonar Cube engineers out in Sweden, I think, and told them, here's what we're seeing with other static tools, and they actually said we're not there yet. Our goal is to get there, but so that start to work with your DevOps teams. Start to, and your main question, or one of your questions, was with the auditors. So we do have, you have to be careful about if you're pulling in some software components from somebody like Oracle. Oracle has very strong anti-reverse engineering statements. And I don't know this personally, but I've heard they like to prosecute. So we get very careful about how far we would go. Would we still scan an Oracle libraries like their third-party libraries? Yes, those are, you know, open source third-party libraries. We've run into that with a number of our vendors where we say, we're not here to scan your code. We're not going to go near your code with our static tool. We understand that that could be very easily construed to be reverse engineering. But if you're using open source libraries that you pulled out, you know, that you haven't built, then we really have a requirement to be able to scan those and know if we're pulling in vulnerable code. And we run into some vendors that are very mature and will already have saying, we understand, and they actually send us dependency check reports. And they'll tell us, release 5.x will have that all fixed. The ones that scare you, Palani, are the ones that when you send them a dependency check report, they go, how did you do that? We've never seen anything like this before. Okay, so that scares the heck out of you when you're dealing with a software vendor that hasn't, that they're mature, you know, their application security program is that immature.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we're using dependency check, we're using NPM audit, we're using retire.js. Retire.js a little more ad hoc, but we're using NPM audit and dependency check in our pipelines right now.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. Yeah, some of the thing that with the commercial tool, what we are seeing is like either it takes more time scanning the repository, or it's not finding. There's a more manual work to go and do the analysis after, you know, the tool does
Right.
that.
Yep. And
Palani,
that's why you can look at things like, you know, is there ways that you could take the dependency check, you know, formats and parse those differently, you know, the CSV versus the HTML. We actually have a little Python parser, and this is, you can go up and find Python parsers that'll do this. You know, we didn't write it from scratch. We went up and somebody said, oh, here's some code that we do parsing with. We looked at it. We pulled it in. We actually scanned it when we got done. And we built an AppSec pipeline with our the Python parser on the dependency scans.
Palani, this is Michael. I also recently created an OWASP ASVS spreadsheet that's completely, you know, you're able to fill it out, and then it does some data calculation to see what you're in, out of compliance with, what's not applicable, and gives you an option to say, hey, this wasn't tested this time around. I do plan on uploading that eventually. There's a few quirks with it right now, but while it's not automated, it definitely saves, you know, an analyst or a security application security engineer some time when they're going through their assessments and assessing against the ASVS for their applications. So once I get that uploaded, I'll send that email out to the chapter.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, John. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, no worries. Good questions. Okay. Let's see. Anything else in chat? Nope, doesn't look like any questions there.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording real quick.
Sure.